In the New Testament, we're taught that a person's faith in Christ must be confessed. But what does this mean? Well, the central fact of the gospel is that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, as we see in Matthew 16:16. In addition to believing it in our hearts, we must acknowledge this truth in the presence of other people. For we read, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For with the heart one believes and is justified, and with the mouth one confesses and is saved. Romans 10:9 and 10. To confess our faith, then, is to say in the hearing of others that we believe that Jesus is the Son of God. Now, if it is a crime to be one of those who believe, we plead guilty and do not hide the truth about who Jesus was. The confession that one makes at the point of baptism is not a one-time act, however. It's the beginning of a lifetime of confessing Christ. For the rest of that person's life, that Christian will fly his colors openly, not hiding his identity as one of Christ's people. Now, if we are too cowardly to confess our faith, then Jesus was clear about the consequences. Everyone who acknowledges me before men, I also will acknowledge before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I also will deny before my Father who is in heaven. Matthew 10:32 and 33. But while the remainder of a Christian's life is to be a confession of Christ, it's still true that an initial confession of faith must be made in becoming a Christian. If we go back to Romans 10:9 and 10, Paul is speaking in that passage about what happens when a person first obeys the gospel. Both faith, which is in the heart, and confession with the mouth are said to be things that are prior to the reception of salvation. They move a person in that direction, but it is only in baptism that a person crosses that line from condemnation to salvation, as we read in Romans 6:4-6. Now, in the account of Paul's own conversion, Ananias said to him in Acts 22:16, "And now, why tarriest thou? Arise and be baptized, and wash away thy sins, calling on the name of the Lord." But nowadays, the importance of a person's confession prior to baptism is not emphasized all that much. Often the act is one that is hurried through almost as a formality. Perhaps we're in a hurry to get the person baptized, but for whatever reason, we neglect to impress upon the candidate for baptism the importance of what they're doing when they confess. I believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. Those words, spoken in the hearing of witnesses, put us on record as being one of the believers, one who has pledged never to renounce or betray the faith. And by our confession, we make a public promise of allegiance, a commitment to Christ for the rest of our lives. Now, friends, that is a serious promise. It's the most serious promise that a person can ever make. Now, in the days when the New Testament was written, Christians were sometimes tortured and put to death for their faith. So in localities where being a Christian was dangerous, it would have been tempting to be a secret believer. But the command to confess one's faith meant that Christ was to be openly acknowledged. He was to be confessed no less when it was dangerous than when it was safe. When Jesus was on trial, Pilate asked him if he was the King of the Jews. Now, in the deadly tension of the moment, I feel that most would have tried to soften the truth, if not deny it altogether. But Jesus did not conceal his identity. No, he confessed it. And by the death that resulted from that confession, our salvation was made possible. It's no wonder Paul described Jesus' confession before Pilate and also our own as the good confession in 1 Timothy 6, verses 12-13. Because no more beautiful words ever fell from anyone's lips than those which acknowledge the truth about Jesus Christ. So if you're thinking about becoming a Christian, consider that obeying the gospel will involve believing the truth about Christ, confessing it in the presence of witnesses, and holding fast to it as long as you live. If, as I believe, the good things in life come from making commitments, the greatest commitment of all, the one we make in becoming a Christian, will carry with it the greatest of all blessings. And friends, I hope that you will not be afraid to confess that you believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. Friends, we thank you for joining us for our program today, and have a blessed day.